2. What's going on, SSBL peeps? It is episode 3. We've been, we had a week off due to some time and some scheduling situations, but we're back. I'm Jay Watt alongside Fresh Cut Fisac, looking good, man, with the fresh cut. How you feeling up there?
Wait, where's my hair? Where'd my hair go? No. Yeah, I'm rocking, as I said to you and in the group. The humidity is here, and it gives my hair its own center of gravity. So we have cut it off. We'll see what we'll do in the summer, but I'll tell you what, it's nice to wake up in the morning and just be ready to go. So like some of these teams,
yeah, absolutely.
The difference between just being able to get up and go and having to struggle through it. My hair is definitely emblematic of the Dragons. So
right?
maybe I have some good fortune now.
Yeah, we'll see how that goes as we talk, and we'll do a little bit. This week's a little bit different due to obviously we haven't talked about the first Super Saturday of the season, which was week 1. We haven't talked about week 2 at all. We haven't talked about obviously week 3, which just concluded. So what we're going to do this week is we're going to talk about each division and kind of where things are at so far through the 3rd weeks, which this weekend, there's something major that happens, which is expansion teams can trade. We'll see what happens, now that they can trade. Are things gonna, as week 4 approaches, week 4 technically it starts Sunday. So week 4, they can now trade. So we'll see how things
make that announcement so that they know that they can trade.
Right.
But I'll tell you one thing: if there's one thing this league was missing this offseason, it was trades.
Yeah, for sure, absolutely. So we're gonna get into the divisions, and the one division that we're gonna start off with is it's been ran by the Moonshots. Absolutely ran by the Moonshots since its creation in season 4, and that's the Heroic Icons division. We have the Moonshots struggling, obviously, with a rebuild. They're actually looking to ship off a few players as they just put some players on the trade block just the other day. So, 0-3. Also have the Liberty sitting there 0-3 as well. Retrievers, finding their footing. They're 2-1. But at that top, the best start in franchise history, Overdraft's 5-0. Fisac, what are your thoughts on this Heroic Icons division? Like I said, formerly ran by the Moonshots, but it looks like the Overdrafts now have their money.
Yeah, I think what's crazy is, has there ever been a single season that the Moonshots did not win the Heroic Icons?
No, they've won it. They've won it
there
every
was
time.
one where they were 8-6, but they still even won it at 8-6, and here's my hot takes. Moonshots are the worst team in this division. And all props to Pandora for turning that around. Cause that was we knew that the Moonshots were not trying to win this season. We didn't realize it was gonna be this bad of it.
Right.
They're worse than the Liberty, and the Liberty are still winless. And then the Overdrafts, I think we underestimated how good the Overdrafts were going to be.
Yep.
Overdrafts are one of 2 undefeated teams, and the only other undefeated team has only played 2 games. Being undefeated, 5-0, getting wins against the Dragons, Walkers, Liberty, Knights. These are teams that they should be beating. I would probably say the Knights and the Dragons would probably be their toughest games. So I don't think they've faced their real they haven't faced the Raw Fielders yet. They haven't faced the Gauchos yet. They haven't faced the Lumberjacks yet. So we'll see what happens when they face those teams. But part of being a good team is also just winning the games that you're supposed to. And so I think that the Overdrafts have done an amazing job to the start of the season. And then the Retrievers sitting there again. I think you're feeling a little iffy if you're a Retrievers fan, given your thoughts of that they probably should be of dominating this division this season. It was theirs to win, but they rebounded with 2 really good wins this past week. Yep. One against teams that they should be beating, but they lost their home opener, or they lost their opener to the Walkers. So
right.
It's all about executing, and so the Retrievers are back on pace, and we'll see if once they start getting these games out of hand, if they can compete with the Overdrafts.
Well, and that's the other thing as well with the Overdrafts is, yes, they should be beating these teams. These teams aren't the greatest. The Dragons are, out of all of them, are probably the best team that they've faced so far. but they're beating their teams. They have a 30 plus 32 run differential. They're at 49 runs through 5 games. They're almost at an average of 10 runs per game. That's the thing with this team, is they are an absolute monster. We thought the Wildcats were that, which they're very simple. Like the Wildcats they're at 39 runs through 4 games, so they're like exactly the same. But like this Overdraft team isn't just like winning by like a handful of runs. They are putting up numbers against these teams, and which 2 players are former moonshots on this offense. You think Bo Jackoon, you got Nico Baca, you got this is like the moonshots version 2. How I see this Overdraft squad.
And I would say Nico Baca is definitely more of like a defensive
Yes.
player for them, but it's the moonshots mentality of cool, score the number of runs you want to score. We're going to put up double digits, and you're going to do absolutely nothing about it. That's what's so scary about it. It's not like they're eking out wins. They are really, I mean, they got the 5-4 win over the Walkers, but aside from that, like it has been exclamation point wins.
Yep. 11-3 against you guys, 10-3 against the Moonshots. We move on to 11-2 against the Liberty, and then last just this week a 12-5 win, which it was 12-4, 12. It was a blowout at Swagger Center against the Knights, which is to be expected. But Overdrafts, that's right now in my opinion, they're the favorites in this heroic conference as well as this division, as we spoke.
And I do want to say, in terms of like, we'll be talking about the expansion teams, but I feel like the Liberty have had the worst brunt of it. Their first 3 games were against the Wrong Fielders, the Overdrafts, and then the Lumberjacks. So they, of all, again, like the expansion teams have 1 win total, but also the Liberty have not really had a good go at it. So.
Yeah, right. Which brings us to talking about the Heroic Legends. This is a very interesting conference. Obviously, Express are 0-5. They've had some. The thing is, Express have always been inches away from a win. They got robbed. Literally inches away from a win. They got robbed by Chase Clout and the Knights with a walk-off home run. That was probably the craziest play almost in SSBL history, to be honest, in terms of, that was the Express's the chance at their first ever win as a franchise in this league. And the Knights, right after a sub, if that player does not get subbed out, I think that ball is gone. Chase Clout is a much better defensive player than their current center fielder. And, I think, obviously it's expected 0-5 are the Express, but it's the top of this the other 3 that are like really a flip of a coin right now. You have the Vikings and Lumberjacks both at 2-1, and the Knights at 1-2. What are how do you think this is? What are your thoughts on this current division as it's shaping up to kind of be an even battle? We thought Vikings were going to be at the towards the bottom, and now they're at the top at just they are just at 2-1.
I honestly still think this is the Lumberjacks division to win. I don't think it's particularly close in terms of. I think the Lumberjacks are far and away better than the other teams in this division. However, we noted about the Vikings. The Vikings have one of the most solid pitching cores of this entire heroic conference, particularly their starting. Now, the issue is what happens when your starter goes out a little early and Tammy John doesn't get called in. The rest of that bullpen is shoddy at best. So I am still hesitant about the Vikings. We'll have to see how they go about it. But if their starters keep on doing what their starters are doing, I think the Vikings will have, flipped my script in terms of saying, like, this is the Lumberjacks division to lose. It's almost like an Overdraft Retriever situation where, like, the Lumberjacks should win this division. But out of nowhere comes this team that is just able to piece together the wins, and particularly off of really, really good pitching. And then for the Express, they got robbed in center so many times. They got to stop hitting to dead away center at boundaries because it's not working for them.
No.
They got robbed at the Knights. They got robbed. Granted, they lost 11-0 to the Gauchos, but they got robbed there. Finally, against the Retrievers, they finally scored a home run into center field. But that game, too, I feel like they should have beaten the Retrievers as well. And it's just, I feel the most for the Express,
Yeah, absolutely.
considering what they've been able to do in these games against
Mhm.
really tough opponents and just haven't come away with it yet. But you know what's gonna happen. You know it's gonna happen.
Right, yeah, but the thing to notice with this Viking squad is 6 runs given up in 3 games. So the pitching is there, and that's the struggle with the Lumberjacks. Lumberjacks sitting at 2-1 as well. They've given up 10 runs in their 3 games, and they only have a +5 run differential, where the Vikings sit at a +11. So I want to say we have this matchup somewhat soon between these two squads. Let me see what we have here. When is Lumberjacks and Vikings, or is this later in the season? Week 8, day 2
Cool.
is what I'm seeing here.
Is that the first one?
Week 8, that is the first one, and then obviously looking at the individual teams, it's a bit off, but it's week 8, day 2, and then the next time they face off, it's not until it was week 10, so it's probably.
That I think that may be. I feel like they. Oh no, they play week 7, day 2. They
Week
play
7,
week
okay.
8, day 2.
Okay, so week 7.
But still, that's really late.
That is very late. So they play, yeah. So
That's that's halfway, but it's also pretty far back.
yeah, that. But I mean, we're looking. If we look at the actual game numbers for the Lumberjacks, that's game number 7 for the Lumberjacks. Game 7 and 10. Those are 2 crucial games, since they do have the Knights twice in the last 3 games. So that's something to keep in mind as well. If you look at the Vikings on the other side, you're gonna have, I think it's around the same, yeah, 7 and 9 for the Vikings or the Lumberjacks games, with the Knights in between those 2 games. So they have Lumberjacks,
The
Knights,
will
Lumberjacks.
separate from the chaff.
Yeah, it's and the issue with the Vikings as well is, those are going to be key wins as they end their season. The Vikings do at the overdrafts. That is not what you want.
Ooh.
You're gonna have to capitalize on these wins. You're gonna have to capitalize against the Lumberjacks in those 2 games. You don't want it to be close. You're gonna want a couple of games ahead. you want a nice lead in this division, because you don't want to end Gaucho's Knights overdrafts, which Knights being in the division, they're still in it. 1 and 2. Are they gonna probably be there by that time? Probably not. But, they might be playing spoiler. But Gaucho's Knights overdrafts the last 3 games for the Vikings. You're going to want to come out and win those 2 games against the Lumberjacks and get a nice cushion heading into the back half of the season.
Yeah, and as we head to the evolution, I kind of feel like the Knights are sort of like the Walkers, where they're not fully dead in terms of their standings, but that's going to change. There's no way the Walkers are going to be able to keep it up, and I don't think the Knights as well. They've given up 28 runs in 3 games. I mean, their entire pitching core, the Knights might have the worst pitching core in the entire SSBL. It is.
I want to say that's the Angels, and we'll get to that when we get to the Galaxy.
Oh yeah, Angels. It might be like Angels, Walkers, Knights, but it's in practice, it's still the same. It is putrid almost at every level.
Yep. No, absolutely. Which, as you mentioned, brings up the evolution. This is probably this division is getting interesting. Obviously, Gauchos, they're in the lead in this division, but they've only played 2 games. They've given up only 4 runs in those, but also scored 22. So they have a +18 run differential in 2 games. So, in 2 games, averaging a +9 victory is quite nice if you're large Marge heading into the remainder of the season. However, Dragons are on a little bit of a roll here. They don't win in their last 2, upsetting the wrong fielders, where, the wrong fielders coming into that game 4-0, get their first loss of the season 4-1. Walkers start off 2-0. Everyone's in panic mode, what is going on with this Walker squad? And then they drop their last 2. Obviously, Fysack, you're in this division. What's your thoughts heading into the remainder of the season, and how this last few games for you have been?
I think the Romfielders are for sure a lot stronger than I anticipated. The Walkers, I'm gonna go and say Walkers have gotten lucky. Walkers have gotten so lucky, and it's gonna become very evident in the next couple of games that they were very lucky. Which means that those wins that they did have over the Retrievers and over the Vikings matter all that more to those
Right.
two teams that they got those wins over them. For the Dragons, it was a tough start of it, starting against the Lumberjacks and then the Overdrafts, and then as well as the Wrongfielders as well, which that Wrongfielders game was a very close and tight affair. It was only a 1-run differential game. And then going about it, getting that win against the Express was huge. And then the Wrongfielders, of course, like, Ting nearly having a no-hitter before Lasers decided to jinx it. I just want everybody to know, okay? Lasers has atoned. He has apologized. So I think it is all in our best interest in the SSBL to ensure that we do not hold this over him. We all do things in the heat of blowouts, and he is apologized to me as well as apologized to everybody in the chat. So we're not going to hold it against him for directly causing the no-hitter to fail. But the Wrongfielders, starting out 4-1, I think is exactly the start you want to have, considering that the Gauchos have some games coming up. And the thing about the Gauchos is, like, I still think they're the team that's going to win this division, but they haven't been tested yet. They played the Knights. They played the Express. They haven't been tested yet. That's not to say that I think that they're not going to win their next couple of games, but I think we'll start to see their mettle a little bit, and we'll also see if there is a chance that either the Romfielders or the Dragons could vie for them. Again, I think the Walkers are going to start sliding pretty hardcore here.
Yeah, and on the Wrongfielder side, they're going to need, obviously they need a rebound quick after this loss to you guys at the Dragons. They're at the Vikings, and they play the Knights, and they they go to the Angels, then go to the Retrievers, and then the Express. That's their next 5. Their last bit of games, Wildcats, Walkers, Gauchos, Moonshots, Overdrafts. That is not, you want to almost go undefeated in those next 5. Otherwise, those back 6 are going to be hell. You have the Gauchos back to back. You have the Wildcats, and you also end your season with the Overdrafts. This loss, they need to bounce back quick, and they need to bounce back with hard. Again, they have to win these next 5, at least 3 or 4 of these next 5, to really, be setting themselves up for a division, almost a division championship, facing against the Gauchos in those last few games.
My worry for the Romfielders is the same thing that happened to the Dragons in season 5, where they started out really hot and then didn't even make postseason. So for the Romfielders, it's crucial that you cannot have losing streaks.
No.
Right? Like, you need to win, but especially like you're saying, like, they need to win 4 or 5 of those next games, and then they potentially pull a game off of, maybe split the series against the Gauchos if you can, as well as, it's a tough call against the Wildcats, but you're gonna need to ensure that you don't have those losing streaks, because it's important to get ahead now, because let me tell you, as someone who had a team that fell fast, you remember the Skulls back in season 4, like, when it starts tumbling, it feels worse than starting out, 0-3, because at least when you're 0-3, your expectations are already in the gutter.
Right.
Then you win 2 games and you're like, okay, I guess we're not total crap. Whereas when you start like 4-0, 6-0, and then start to go like you're 6-4, it feels even worse.
No, absolutely. And the fact of you have your I would almost call them freebies, but we're gonna knock on wood there. You have the Knights and the Angels back to back. The Vikings is your next game. That's going to be a little bit of a tougher matchup. I do think that the Wrongfielders do have the edge over the Vikings, but Knights, Angels should be wins. Retrievers going to be a tough one. Express should be a win. So again, you should be winning potentially 3 of these next 5. But if you win less than that, the Wrongfielders are in for it. at that last 6 games of the season. I still think the Gauchos have only played 2 games, but they still are exactly who we thought they would be. Like I said, giving up only 4 runs. Their next game, though, is against the Overdrafts, which is an exciting game to look out for. It'll kind of tell us where this heroic conference really is and where these teams stack up against each other. So the heroic it's always been the underrated, like the lesser of the 2 conferences, but this is really setting up to be an absolute showcase dogfight in each of these 3 divisions. Speaking of, obviously the Retrievers dogfighting against the Overdrafts there. So heroic is something to look out for. They haven't won a Super Series since the Lumberjacks in season 4.
Really?
Yeah. So we
5 Skulls,
season 5,
6 Bombers,
and
season 7 High Rollers. Oh my god!
Heroic has not won a Super Series since the Lumberjacks. So it's time for the heroic conference to step it up. Which
that ruined my day.
So we'll go ahead and move on to the epic conference, and we'll start off with the Galaxy. This is such an interesting division. It's a battle of 2 teams, but it's a battle that we've already seen the first battle of this war, I guess you're gonna even call it, between the Unicorns and the Wildcats, where the Unicorns got the best of the Wildcats. Obviously Wildcats still putting up massive numbers, 39 runs through 4 games. And you look at the Unicorns, they've put up 25 runs through 5 games, but their run differential of 16 through those 5, and obviously Mythic 0-2, Angels 0-3. This, like I said, this is a division between those 2 teams. What are your thoughts on this division, obviously, as we see the first battle of Unicorns Wildcats?
Yeah, and I do want to start by just talking about the bottom end. Mythic obviously tanking. Are the Angels the worst team in the history of the SSBL in terms of where they are this season? I personally, I was going to say before the last game of week 3, day 3, that they were by far and away the worst ever team, put forth, in the history of the SSBL. Then they only lost to the Unicorns by 1 run. So maybe it was a little bit of an overstatement on my part, but it is going to be a struggle for them to win 1 game this season. I'm going to be honest. They're going to have one of their starters go all the way if they want any chance to get a win. So that's sort of like the bottom end. And then, it goes back to what I said when we were first talking about Unicorns Wildcats. I honestly think it's going to come down to how you play within your conference. For the Unicorns, they got that win over the Wildcats. They lost to the Stingers. For the Wildcats, their only loss is to the Unicorns. It's a 16-game season. Only 2 of your games are against that other juggernaut. So it's going to come down to how do you do against the High Rollers? How do you do against the ball players?
Right.
How do you do but even the bottom end? How do you do against the Bombers? I'm gonna go in real quick. I didn't mean to say the Bombers were the bottom end. I just see them at 2-2, and so it automatically thought that the Bombers are not the bottom end. I'm more so like the Cyclones are 0-2. Their Cyclones are 0-2, but they're not that bad of a team. So it's more so gonna come down to with the Galaxy. I'm really interested to see their interdivision play and see how that continues to manifest. Unicorns, I think they've been a little less dominant than I thought they were going to be. But it's RNG. We'll see if that still continues. It's just so nice to see what this is reminding me of is Bombers Unicorns last season. And so it's nice that we have Unicorns Wildcats to sort of take up the mantle of that. It was the Phenoms battle, and now it's the Galaxy battle now, where the Unicorns have a challenger in their division.
Yeah, no, absolutely. And we're going to see on day 1 this week, we're going to see battle number 2. and see how they go at Bengado, right? No, we're going to Shaka. So so that's going to be a very interesting one as well, as we head to Shaka, and we'll talk about it also in overrated underrated with the home field advantage situation, as obviously the Wildcats' home field advantage was not there in their 4-1 loss to the Unicorns in week 2, which something to also note with the tiebreaker situation. You're going to definitely want to, if you're the Wildcats, this game you want to put a absolute beating to the Unicorns on the road. You're going to you have to win by at least 4 to have that run differential, head-to-head situation there. So this division, it's going to shape up to be we could have an absolute championship match for this division come the end of the season, but just because these two teams are so neck and neck in terms of their, the Unicorns have just about everything, but they have that pitching, where Wildcats also have the pitching, but they have the runs too, and their run production is insane. So we'll see how this division shapes up. It is, like we said, a 2-team battle, and we will obviously Mythic tanking this season, and as you said, Angels probably the worst team to be put out there into the SSBL realm. Which we'll go ahead and move on to the division that we've talked about numerous times, whether it's in the Discord, and then obviously on the 2 episodes so far of Jacked, and that's the Novas. Ball players 4-1 sitting at the top, Stingers just below them at 2-1, Skulls 1-3, and then Cyclones 0-2. Fisac, your thoughts on this division, as ball players 4-1, but only at a +8 run differential as well. So it's not like they're getting these 4 wins easily.
If you throw out that 19-4 loss to the Wildcats, the Stingers are 2-0 with a +3 run differential. Instead, they're 2-1 with a -12. I think that Wildcats game is putting too much weight on the Stingers in terms of where they actually are. I think that this is similar, where like the ball players and Stingers are very much 2 evenly matched teams. And then for the Skulls, like, as you are very much well aware, it's just been more so unlucky for the Skulls in terms of you get the hits, you get on base, just can't convert it, and it's more so just RNG. But even with the Cyclones, I feel like the Cyclones, they lost by 1 run to the ball players, as well as the only other game they played this season, they lost by 2 runs to the Stingers. The Cyclones aren't even that bad of a team. Like, this entire division is very much up for grabs at this point, because even with the Skulls being 1-3 and the ball players being 4-1, it's not that I don't think the ball players are good. I do think the ball players are definitely very, very good and deservedly are deserving of that top spot. Yeah. However, I think that this is by far the most, from top to bottom, competitive division still. And that Epic Novas that we set out from the start, that this was the division to watch, I still think that's true, and I still think that there's a lot to be learned from this season from the Epic Novas.
No, absolutely. And we, Skulls have 4 games this week, and 2 of them are division games. Cyclones on day 1, that'll be game 1, and then the game of the night, presented by Turtle Beach, ball players and Skulls at Bengado Bowl, which the Skulls were the team that gave the ball players their first loss and their only loss of the season. So the Skulls have had the ball players number the past few seasons. If I'm not mistaken, they went 2-0 against them last season. They're 1-0 so far this season. So we'll see how this is going to be an absolute battle, despite this will see how the Skulls actually end up doing. 4 games this week, they could be 1-7 by the end of it. Who knows? So this will really shape with the Skulls having 4 games. It'll really tell us kind of where they sit, and then the other teams will kind of fall into place. But definitely going to be a fight to the finish in this division. Which now we'll move on to probably my favorite division in the entire SSBL, to be honest. I absolutely love this division because it is 3 managers who are absolutely passionate about their teams. always in the chat, always supporting their teams. The banter is there, the history is there. Serpents are sitting at the top right now, 3-1. We have the last two Super Series champions in this division as well. High Rollers season 7, season 6, the Bombers both at 2-2. This division is the absolute this is it should be like the epic massacre division, because that's exactly what it is. Sparrows are going to just sit there and get picked off one by every single game. I don't see them competing. They did beat the Skulls, and
how do you feel about the
I'm
only
fine with that. I'm fine with that.
being...
I'm fine with that. It's again, it's Sticks / Wiggins. I'm fine with losing to him. But this is a division, man, that's, High Rollers 2-2, a -2 run differential. Bombers, they're now 2-2 and +15, where Serpents 3-1 with a +14. So this is really going to be a absolute battle, and we're not going to see the Serpents and the Bombers play until I think week 7. I think it is.
Man. Yeah, the thing is that if the Epic Novas are the best battle top to bottom, the Epic Phenoms are the best battle 1, 2, 3. What separates these teams? Legitimately, what separates them? They each have such unique playing styles, unique roster building styles, that you never know what you're going to get in these games. The Bombers losing their first 2 games 4-3 off of walk-off home runs, and then getting a 6-0 win over the Skulls, 11-0 win over the Sparrows. For the High Rollers, getting that 4-3 win over the Bombers, 3-0 over the Mythic, and then after that, they proceeded to lose 8-3 to the Ball Players and 1-0 to the Serpents. And then for the Serpents, that 1-0 win, 13-2 over the Angels, losing to the Unicorns, and then getting 11-1 win over the Sparrows. To me, those are all teams, in terms of the games they played, they've dominated in games that they should have. They've lost in close games.
Yep, very close.
And very close games, and then there's only anomalies here or there, like the Serpents 13-2. This is such a close battle at the top, as opposed to where the Epic Novas, it's anybody can have a go at it, and that's going to make it more chaotic. The Phenoms is a cutthroat, as you said, massacre is the right word to use. It's a massacre. Yeah. It utterly is a massacre, and it is always fun to watch those games. And as much as the Serpents are the bane of many teams in terms of how they feel about them, it's nice to have a successful Serpents again, because it's nice to hate a team that's actually doing well, as opposed to where they were last season. As much as people probably don't like me saying that, it's in better taste to dislike the good teams than the bad teams.
Right. And then obviously, I could see 3 of these teams being 3 of the 6 teams in the postseason. There's a good chance that we have that. It's such a tough battle, but they are probably 3 of the better teams in this division. If you look across, it's a battle. Obviously, like we mentioned, you got to play. You not just got to beat your division teams, but you got to beat your other teams. But this is a different division. You're playing 4 games of your 16. And that's tough to swallow, where 4 of your games are against insanely good teams plus the other people. Your division is stacked. This is a stacked division outside of Sparrows.
The Epic, and if we can just real quickly before we go to the next segment, just talk about the playoff picture a little bit. When you said that all 3 of these can make postseason, that's crazy, because there's that. You're telling me the Unicorns and Wildcats aren't going to make it. Those are definitely going to be the other 2, which means that the only other team that would make it would be the division winner for the Novas. I actually think what's even crazier to think about is I only think 2 of those teams in the Phenoms are going to make it. There's going to be 1 team that doesn't make the cut, and there's going to be 2 in the Novas that do. I think it's going to be 2-2-2, which is between the Serpents, High Rollers, and Bombers. who wouldn't make the postseason in that manner? It is far more likely that one of those teams misses out than all three of them make it in. And it's crazy to think that Bombers are top 5 in the league in terms of their entire roster. High Rollers just won a Super Series, but then the Serpents are nothing to walk over as well. And if they get the wins that they need to get, like getting a 1-0 win over the High Rollers, doesn't have to look pretty. Doesn't matter how much more dominant or how much less dominant you were.
Right.
That's still a win. And so that's crazy thing about with the Epic as opposed to the Heroic, where I feel like it's a little bit more set. There's a little bit more question at I like the bottom, but I mainly just wanted to point out that like it's crazy in the Epic that there's going to be a really good team. I mean, because I think Unicorns and Wildcats are making it. So to be honest, if it were to hold today and the Skulls of Rock don't have a run, if the Cyclones don't have a run, between the Ball Players, Stingers, Serpents, High Rollers, and Bombers, one of those doesn't make it, and that's so weird.
That's terrifying. That's terrifying to think about, and the thing also to note. I don't know if many truly know how the seeding format goes this season. Now that we have 3 divisions, the 3 divisions, those are your 1 through 3 seeds, and then everything else follows. So right now, Serpents are sitting at the I believe the number 3 seed, which they would face the High Rollers due to the head-to-head between the Bombers. That's insane. Like, look at these matchups on that we have here. Wildcat Stingers. If playoffs started today, that would be a matchup. Serpents, High Rollers, and Bombers are outside looking in.
I do want to briefly point out as well that like in the last season where it was the play-in between the Bombers and the Unicorns, winner got the first round bye, loser got the 3rd seed. How about a situation in which the winner gets the 1 seed and the loser is the 4th seed? And by the way, doesn't get to wait until the conference finals to play. If you're the 4 seed, you're now playing that 1 seed in the very next divisional round.
Yep.
Like that's even crazier.
Yeah. This season is probably shaping up to be one of like the craziest actual seasons. We have crazy like regular seasons, but we've had insane postseasons. But we've never really had both. It's always been one or the other. And it's mainly been postseason, but I think this season, adding the extra division, adding the 2 additional games, this is where it's about to be a little like a best of both worlds. We're gonna have an insane regular season and an insane postseason, and I can't wait for this season to continue on, because it's been crazy so far. We've only been through 3 weeks. We're about to start week 4, which we have a Super Saturday coming up. It's going to be insane. Which we'll now head to our next segment, overrated, underrated, and we'll stay here in the Epic Conference, and we'll talk about the ball players. Ball players, are they overrated at their 4-1 +8 run differential, or are they underrated and kind of almost deserving at to where they're at in this division?
I'm gonna go overrated, not because I don't think they're that good, but because of their like we keep on saying, because of the division. But seriously, because of the division, not a single game in that division is a like game where you are dominant to win. Like if you're in the Epic Galaxy, if you're the Wildcats and the Unicorns, you're expecting to go 4-0 against the Mythic and the Angels. If you're in the Epic Phenoms, you're expecting to go 2-0 against the Sparrows. It's one of the only divisions where you could still go 2-0 against one of the teams in your division, but that's not necessarily what everybody expects. Everybody expects all those games to be close, and so I think that's very, very dangerous for how that can play out.
Right, and I'm going to go ahead and agree with you. I'm going to say overrated, and here's why. First win of the season, a 1-run win against the Cyclones. Second win of the season, 8-6 win over the Sparrows. Then a 1-0 loss to the Skulls, a 1-run win over the Bombers, and their biggest win of the season is against the High Rollers, which is a massive win overall.
But that happened late. As well. It was a very close game and that was in extra innings that happened as well. The High Rollers could have very easily walked it off in regulation.
Yeah, so that's a +5. They have a +9 run differential. Take away that last game, you have a +4 through 4 games. that to me, I'm gonna, like I said, I'm gonna stick with overrated, but that's why these games are way too close. They could literally be 2-3 right now, but or even 1-4 even, like this, like it could be flip flopped. So they've hung on. They're still a great team. That doesn't discredit their roster and what May has built over there, but it's
compared to another 4-1 team,
Right.
team, it's not as solid.
Yeah, absolutely. Which we're gonna now talk about a player in overrated, underrated. And thinking of the topics for this season, this came up while watching the overdrafts and Knights game last night, and how KDC she's flown under the radar ever since she's been a solid defender, not really like known for her bat, but here she is this season and she's hitting bombs. Is KDC an underrated player here in the SSBL, or is she overrated, or just because of the 3 home runs that she's had so far this season?
I think she's been good, but I think it's overrated. Not because I don't think KDC is good, but because of how much of KDC's success is the overdraft's success. Like in previous seasons, if you had a KDC like hitting 3 home runs, if you had a Jackson Moore hitting 3 home runs, that's cool. They're still probably going to lose. Like the overdrafts just never had that depth throughout the entire lineup. Like usually for most teams, like you get to the 7, 8, 9 and you get a little bit of a reprieve. Finally, for the overdrafts, they built a lineup that has consistency throughout it. And so it's similar to the ball players, where it's like, I'm not saying she's not good, but I think that the overdraft success is much more indicative of having a KDC at every single order. That means that you have more opportunities for a KDC to step up and get those 3 home runs to start. We'll see if it continues for her, without a doubt, but I think it's more so overrated when you're looking at it. And I think you probably may disagree with me here with this.
I think she is an underrated player, but I think why she's underrated, and it's to your point though, is that her success is because of the overdrafts. And that's because they have not had any success the last few seasons. That she's been flying under the radar, where now the overdrafts are out there. Overdrafts have the attention that this is now her time to shine, and she's showing up to when it matters. She's been there, but this franchise has not been one to really be at like a highlight team. The only team from an inaugural, as well as just from like outside the expansion teams, to never win a postseason game. KDC is flown under the radar, and it's probably one of the underrated infielders from a defensive standpoint. And now she's showing up at the plate here in season 8. So I'm gonna say she's underrated. We'll see how she does the remainder of the season. She obviously facing one of the best pitching rotations in the Gauchos here soon. So I'm gonna go ahead and say underrated. The next one. There's a lot of chatter now that we have like these new managers in. We have everyone really paying attention now to these minors games that are going up on YouTube. So if you haven't subscribed to our YouTube channel, make sure you do. Minors go up every Sunday. There's a lot of really good competition here, in my opinion. I'm going to say it's very underrated. Like, there's a lot of competition in this minors squad. Obviously, a lot of teams, you have some teams with a bunch of young players, trying to get that progression. But then you have like the old rosters that are still like competing out there, and what was it? Close to a perfect game with the Monstars. The Monstars are one of the scariest teams out there, to be honest, here in the minors. Fisac, your thoughts on the competition that we're seeing in the minors so far?
For week 2, if you throw out the 15-5 blowout win for the Jungle Kings over the Good Boys, the margin of victory total for those 11 games was 32 runs. That's less than 3 runs a game for each one, which is a very competitive game. I still think there are very much teams that do not have full built-out minors. The Dragons, for example, we've got like 6 starters. We still have some Risens in there, so there are still very much some teams that don't have. I mean, the poor Chippers, the poor Lumberjacks. Will they ever have a full minors system? I don't know if they ever will. But besides like those examples, it's very much probably the most competitive that we've seen it. And I think part of that is because teams like the Good Boys, like the Horsemen, the Corns of Pop, their best players are now in the majors. Like they did their time and now they're gone. So it's not as top heavy as it used to be,
Right.
especially considering how reduced this year's draft was as well. It's much closer in terms of the margins.
Yeah, no, absolutely. And I'm looking forward to seeing how these teams do. Goofy Goobers for the Skulls, they're very similar to that of like the Dragons, where we have a handful of starters, but still have a ton of risings. I think no pitching from we have all old season one, maybe one season two pitcher and in the minors, but a handful of bats there. So we're still building our roster there, but there are so many rosters now that are starting to really find their footing. And I like seeing the Monstars 2-0, the Metros 2-0. So these are all this is the future of these franchises.
Lovebirds 2-0.
Lovebirds also 2-0. The last team, the Justice they're
0-2, but also only a -5, and the losses were to the Freebooters and the Cobras.
Right.
So not necessarily horrible losses.
Right. So I'm actually really enjoying this minors action. We do, however, from a viewership standpoint, we have got to beat the first ever minors game that was ever posted, ever casted, and it was the Good Boys versus the Spartans, I believe, a few seasons ago. It is still the number one viewed video, I think actually episode 2 of Jacked is now the number one viewed video on our channel. But prior to that, and it's still getting views though. That's the thing. Good Boys Spartans season 6, so the first season of minors, that is still getting views week after week. It's like, it might be one view, but whoever's watching it every single week, good for you, because that was actually a pretty stellar game if I recall. So we'll go ahead and move on to our next overrated underrated, home field advantage, and we have it here in our notes, which actually, where is my notes? There we are.
So you had it at 1725. I did some math.
Did I do it wrong?
I think the home field advantage is underrated in terms of like, is home field advantage overrated considering it's 1725? However, if you look at the math, when you include the expansion teams are 1-10 at home and 0-3 away. So when you consider those and you take those games out, home field advantage is 13-15 considering that. So I think it's underrated considering the overall record of home field advantage, because we forget the 14 games that the expansion teams have played, 11 of them have been at home. So it's very much swayed it.
No, absolutely. And I'm going to go ahead and say it's a bit overrated. And I'm saying that because of, you look at the Unicorns Wildcats, a close, supposed to be a close games. Wildcats can't pull it off. Obviously we've had a handful of walk-off victories, majority of them over the Bombers. 2 of them actually over the Bombers. But it's there. I just think that, there's a lot of these, overdrafts facing the moonshots. That's, obviously a given, but that's a 10-3 ball game. I think it's just a bit overrated. I think it's kind of equal. It's really, with RNG, it's a coin toss, and I think that with how competitive these teams are now, outside of obviously the expansion teams, it is 13-15, but I think it's that close of a coin toss where there's no advantage. There really is no advantage. If the crowd noise actually amped up every single time, like the team comes back, or crowds are very mute in this game in certain points. So home field advantage, a bit overrated in my opinion. So we'll move on to the next one. This was one that I've it's happened in the past in terms of having some involvement from Turtle Beach, but I have a contact there, and she's very excited about.
You get it? You have a contact at Turtle Beach. No, it's so cool.
She's very excited about what the SSBL is and how it's community driven, and obviously we now have our game 3, which in last episode we decided game 3 was our game of the night. So if you are attending a SSBL stream, which this this next week, so not this week's this coming week's giveaway, but the week after, you'll have Super Saturday to also attend. So you'll have multiple entries to go about that. So SSBL Game of the Night, we're going to give away 11 total headsets of different varieties throughout. Fight Sack, is this an overrated feature, underrated feature here in the SSBL?
I think it's very underrated in terms of what it means for the SSBL and also what it means for the Game of the Night. I think for the Game of the Night, like we contemplated moving it to the third game instead of the fourth game. And I don't know about you, and in the comments and in the Discord, you can let us know. But I think it's really changed the dynamic of the stream. And I think what's been fun about it is that people have poked fun at the last game of the evening is now called the Lopside Game of the Night presented by Lopside, or it was the blowout game of the night presented by Lopside Industries, is what everyone calls it. But if you look, since we made the designation that Game 3 is, the Overdraft's Walkers was 5-4, the Romfielders Walkers was 5-4, the Lumberjacks Liberty was 5-2. The Gauchos Express was 11-0, but then Game 4s, where the rest were 3-2 Retrievers and 5-4 Unicorns. So it's been cool that, like, there's a little bit of a meme culture now about it, where one, we do have more. I don't know if the viewership numbers have shown it, but it feels like there's more, at least active viewership during the Game of the Nights now. At least more people. I think I've seen more people who have been like awake to be able to attend the games, as well as the fact that like there's now a little bit of a vendetta against League Office about whoever is set up as that fourth matchup. And it just makes it more interesting when it's actually close, because you're not just watching the game and rooting for the common teams. Like, you're actually rooting to go against League Office, which I'm all for, making League Office a villain in terms of if it means more people are engaged with it. But also just like our community is so great. I love our community, and being able to like, this is not cheap stuff to like get. Like, Turtle Beach is not cheap headwear from like middle of nowhere. Like, this is like good quality stuff to be giving out, and it's only the best is what our community deserves. I'm just really excited.
No, and I think this is a great opportunity for the league to bring people in. Obviously, everyone loves the giveaway. Everyone loves free stuff. But like someone who's, whether it's on Reddit, Twitter, any social media platform where they hear about, hey, I can win a Turtle Beach headset by, attending Game 3 and just saying that I'm here, which we'll figure out and see if there's another way of doing that. But right now it's worked. And people are there, and it's the interactions that we get to see, but it's about possibly bringing in more people to come into this league and notice that this is a community, this is a league, but it's a community. The amount, you guys in y'all's Wordle, y'all have y'all's own dedicated channel for y'all's Wordle.
That reminds me, I'm gonna do the Wordle for today while we do this.
We have the lore suggestions, which can be an absolute being able to just to go back into lore suggestions and see what it is probably the funniest thing you could ever. So there is so much about this community, and it's exciting to be partnering with a company such as Turtle Beach to bring more and more people, even if they're not even gamers. Bring baseball people who whether they need a headset to the Scout Airs to wear while they're going on a run or at work or whatever the case may be. Having those headsets and having a partner like Turtle Beach is incredible for the league. Underrated, absolutely. And I'm excited to do these 11 giveaways, because they're going to continue to get better and better week after week. It's exciting times.
You heard it here first. It's
exciting times. So we're now going to go into one of our favorite segments of this podcast, and that's going to be Panic and Chill. FISAC, I'm going to go ahead and start with this first one. Season 8 expansion teams. They're 1 and, let me pull up my notes, 1 and 13.
Yeah, they are 1 and 13.
Are we panicking? Are we chill? I'm going to go ahead and say we're chill, because this is kind of what we expected. Obviously, Mythic moved a lot of their players into the minors. We see that with the Monstars showing up. Liberty doing very similar. Express has a lot of players down there. I'm going to say we're chill. This is not something that, these teams need to be, freaking out about. Oh, we're 0-5, we're 0-3, we're 0-2, we're 1-3 if we're the Sparrows, thanks to the Skulls. But like, I think we're pretty chill here for the expansion teams because they have a bright future ahead of them.
Well, I'm panicking because I just got the whirlwind too, so that was fantastic there. I am also agreeing. I am doing chill for the expansion teams. I think when we had the season 4 expansion, and that was my first season, and the fact that the expansion sides were really, really good, and the fact that the expansion side won it all, I think that that's cool. And at that time, because there was no minors, there was no development, right? Like your team was your team. If you dropped a player, you dropped a player. So it was much harder to roster build, and I think it made sense that the teams were. I still think they were a little too, but they were still. It was still. Yeah. I think it made sense. I think expansion teams in this regard makes much more sense, both realistically as well as the way it works as well. Where like we want managers to be able to learn how to be a manager, and with an expansion side, like it is very rare in the real world that an expansion side actually does well in their first couple of seasons, and even if they do, it's usually for the short term, and it leads to long term, being I mean, look at the Cleveland Browns ever since they revitalized their organization.
Seattle Kraken.
The
Seattle Kraken in the NHL, one of like the worst teams in the NHL right now.
But what it does is it builds loyalty. It also makes it feel so much better when it works out. Like I can already tell right now that the first season, that first of all, every single expansion side, when they get their first win, everyone's going to be so happy for them. Like everyone was so happy for the Sparrows for their first win. Everyone's going to be so happy for these expansion sides when they get their first win. And the first winning season for an expansion side, the first playoff berth by an expansion side, everyone's going to be so excited for them because they didn't come in and disrupt everything. It almost like for the managers, it feels like they paid their time.
Right.
And it makes us feel more welcoming to them in that regard. So I'm definitely chilling.
Yeah, absolutely. And speaking of the expansion teams getting their first victory, these teams, in terms of almost a guaranteed win, we have Sparrows Express Week 9. We have Mythic Liberty Week 9 as well. We have I want to say at the back end we have Liberty Express Week 13. So there might be that one team that's out of the question of getting a victory, but there's with them playing each other, it's gonna be nice to see those first victories come in. And unfortunately, there might not be a victory for at least one of those. But we'll see. Which obviously
they play the Angels twice, so right. We'll see.
So we'll see the the one win so far from the expansion team is against the Skulls, which is our next panic and chill topic. Obviously me being the manager of said Skulls, I'm panicking hardcore. I've written in the lore suggestions twice. I've put a trade block out with a bunch of stars on it. I am panicking. I have 4 games this week. I might be 1-7 by the end of the week. I don't know. I'm panicking. This is and I also have like 1 pick in the 3rd round or something next season, something like that. Or I might even not have any. I don't know. It's bad. It's panic time. It's panic time for me.
Yeah, I don't think I could say anything that you're not going to say in terms of it's already a tough division. And again, when we talked about the idea of both the Unicorns and Wildcats getting in, which again, I think that's almost a lock that the Unicorns and Wildcats are getting in. Mm-hmm. The fact that between those 5 teams, Serpents, High Rollers, Bombers, Ball Players, Stingers, if it were to end today, one of those doesn't make it out. Well, you now factor in your Skulls aren't even in that 5 to consider. So definitely needs to make some headway because I feel like for the Novas, the best way to guarantee is to get that division win. I don't know if you finish second in the Novas. While I do think it should work out for whoever finishes second to qualify in for postseason, it's not as sure of a thing as like the Phenoms finishing
Right.
second or like the Galaxy finishing second. And I genuinely think that the Novas and Phenoms, it'll be the Phenoms number 3 versus the Novas number 2 to get into the postseason
Yeah.
is my prediction. So and again, you're only down by one. You're only back a half game actually. So it's not the end of the world, but it's also that Sparrow's loss is probably going to come back and haunt. I know
No,
you say that you
absolutely.
feel good for them. You don't mind losing to Sticks. We'll see how you feel about that come week
Right.
9.
No, I mean honestly, come this week to be honest, again 4 games, 2 in the division. I guess the only way that I can be chill is I look at the age of each player. Lots of 6s on this roster, lots of 7s. Logan Strange is putting on a nice show in the minors. You know, I'm feeling chill in that regard, but I'm panicking because the numbers, again, the hits out there, the runners left on base, it's insane. So I'm panicking as the Skulls and everyone else as a Skulls fan or a Skulls hater is still probably panicking for the Skulls as well. Next on the panic and chill list, High Rollers. Obviously starting off well. They lose to the Ball Players 8-3, and then they lose. They lose to the Serpents 1-0. Are we panicking yet now, or with this loss, or are we chill if we're the High Rollers defending their crown?
Well, defending their crown, I'm panicking. But if I'm Donut, I'm chilling. Because Donut, told us that this High Rollers team was not going to be as good as it's been. And that I think Donut realizes that it was the perfect storm last season. Not saying that the High Rollers didn't deserve it. The High Rollers
Right.
deserved to win the Super Series based off the path that they had. However, if one thing goes a different way, like to beat the Bombers and the Unicorns was really, really impressive from the High Rollers. I don't know how sustainable that is, and Donut is very aware of that in
Right.
terms of the way he's talked about his team in the Discord, how he's talked about his team during streams. Not saying the High Rollers won't make postseason, but I think Donut is very content to have his team be. Of course, he would love to win his division, and especially with the Phenoms, anything can happen. But he's also content just to make postseason and to cause some ruckus.
Yeah, absolutely. And something I'm gonna say, high rollers should be chill as well. I'm also looking at their farm system here with the Diamond Jacks. They have 4 pitchers that are season 8. One's already a plus 200, over 200, a 205 pitcher in Whiffy Fanner. Then they have 4 batters that are season 8, and then 1 season 7. I'm gonna stay chill. I want to say they also have a handful of picks next season. So regardless of the outcome, how this season goes, I'm going to remain chill because they are set up still to be a contender here for seasons to come. Which brings us to this next one and why I put it on panic and chill. Obviously, Walkers, they were like, oh, they're going to be the worst team with the Angels this season. They start off 2-0 with 2 upsets. Then they fall to 2 in a row. To be honest, I'm going to go in and say I'm chill. But partially chill, partially panic. I say chill because the Walkers are doing what they need to do, is lose. I'm panicking because they only have 1 pick in next year's draft, and that's their first round pick, and that's why I'm chill. They still hold on to they control their destiny outside of the wheel, obviously in the lottery, but they control whether they're a lottery team or not at this rate. If they continue the trend of losing, they hold on to their pick, but that's why I'm panicking, because there's only 1. You'll have 2 comp picks more than likely, but again, you have 1 pick in next season's draft, and it's your round 1. So I'm in between, but leaning more towards chill.
I am panicking because they had 4 picks in the season 8 draft. They were season 3. They were round 3 and later. It was Yeti Cool, Poof Disappeareth, who, by the way, is not even a season 8 player, Bob Axolotl, and Petty Pew. So they got the pitching, but I'm panicking because if they were going to do something, they lost their 2 games to the Overdrafts and the Wrong Fielders 5-4. Both of them to those teams. 5-4. It's just I'm panicking because I don't know what to think. I don't know. They're not supposed to be winning, but also their losses aren't even bad losses.
No.
Like it's just so tough to feel. So I'm panicking because I'm in confusion.
Yeah, no, absolutely. They do have in the minors, they have Amir Khan as a season 7 Doge Rocket, season 7. They have in their at least actually I think did Bogart get moved down to the minors, or is he still up? No, he got moved down because Will Asiago is now in the majors. So it doesn't reflect here on the rating sheet, but that's a lot of season 8 pitching. So that's something as a positive note, even though they are on the lower end of that spectrum of whether you're a decent pitcher or you're plus 200. They do have a 203 in whoever. Slater, I'm not going to pronounce that first name, season 7. So that is something to to look forward to. 99 velocity, but the accuracy is not there. It's just going to be an uphill battle for this Walker squad. We might not see them in the postseason, honestly, for probably maybe season 11 at this rate. I don't see, they don't have the offense. The fact that a season 2 veteran in Crew Hart is really carrying them to these wins anyway, as well as Mala Dakota, who's a season 4. This is a very odd situation. But again, I'm going to say chill just because they're starting a trend where they need to, and that is going to hold, that round 1 pick is going to hold a lot of weight, to where, again, you can turn 1 into 2 and then 2 into, they could eventually get more picks, depending on whether it's a new manager that comes in or if Zarby decides to trade that round 1 pick next season. So which we're now going to move into the final segment of this, and I just froze you on accident by clicking the wrong thing. So we'll go ahead and head into the final segment here, and that is our week ahead, which we do have a Super Saturday this week, which is exciting. And FISAC, we have day 1. Like I said, battle number 2 between the Wildcats and Unicorns. What are your thoughts on this game heading into week 1?
I think the Wildcats are going to be out for blood. Know what's crazy is that this isn't even the best game of the week. Like we have 5 different games here that we have scheduled as like the game of the nights, right? The SSBL game of the night presented by Turtle Beach. It's like the third best. It's the third best, which is crazy. It's crazy that that's the third best matchup this week. Yeah. I'm looking for the Wildcats to they're going to have their I believe it'll be their number 1, versus the Unicorns number 2. So there's granted, I know that
so Renault versus Jar is what we got there.
Yeah. I know that Elder tinkered with his rotation so that like his number 1 isn't necessarily the number 1 pitcher. However, at the same speak, like Auntie Jar is probably one of the best pitchers in the SSBL in terms of when you look at her like pitching ratings. Right. So that's a game for the Wildcats to get some revenge.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think they will. I think the Wildcats will come out on top. It's going to be very similar to, I think, their first encounter. But it being at Shaka, it's very similar to Bengata Bowl. It's probably 2 of the largest stadiums in this game, and that's where I think this is going to be a battle for sure. Another one of those massacres. I don't think it's going to be a 19-run plus game by the Wildcats, but it's definitely going to be a solid game for sure. And I definitely rank it probably number 3 out of the 5 that we have here. Which move on to day 2, game of the night. Ball Players versus Skulls at Bengata Bowl. I think this probably sits to me at number 5 out of the 5 we have here. But it's still one of those games where this is like, obviously depending on what happens on day 1, this is like a do or die moment here for the Skulls this season, as they've already beat the Ball Players once, 1-0. Can they beat them again and kind of keep them in a little bit of like in that race, in that division, or even just in the conference as well? FISAC, what are your thoughts on this Ball Players Skulls of Rock matchup in day 2?
I mean, it's the Skulls number 1 versus the Ball Players number 2. So there's definitely in that favor, and I think the Skulls have much more to lose here than the Ball Players do.
Right.
But I mean, any Epic Novas match can always be a game of the night, just because like game of the night isn't about who are the best teams that are playing tonight. Game of the night is who are the best teams that are playing, but also what is the closest game that can probably happen.
Right.
And I think for this one especially, Ball Players went like tied 3-3 with the High Rollers for what was it, 2 innings of extras, and then blew it open with 5 runs in the top of the 12th, I believe it was. So Ball Players they were away in that one as well. So exactly 1 week later, what can they do when faced with this dilemma of, playing Skull's team that has a lot more to fight for in terms of where they are at. So I'm excited to see what these two teams will have. I also rank it 5th.
No, this one's gonna be. It might be one of the underrated games out of the 5, but we'll see how this matchup turns up. Day 3, this one I would probably rank. This is number 2. It could be a battle for number 1 just because of a storyline perspective and where these two teams are at, and that's the Overdrafts taking on the Gauchos on day 3. This one is going to kind of define who the Overdrafts truly are as they face off against this Gaucho squad.
I think the Gauchos are going to take this one. I don't think the Overdrafts are bad, but I do think that the Gauchos are much more of a consistent team from top to bottom, all in the bullpen. So for the Overdrafts, I think this is going to be the first loss of the season, and Gauchos are going to be the only remaining undefeated team at the end of week 4, day 3, because it's the battle of the 2 undefeated. So only one makes it out, and this is also my second.
Yeah, it's and looking at the schedule, do any of these teams play?
Overdrafts Gauchos do not play until week 4.
Okay, so yeah, battle of the undefeateds. One team obviously will no longer have that undefeated season. So moving on to Super Saturday, which, as we talked about, they're very underrated in the SSBL. First game of the night, day, morning, however you want to really word it, our game of the day, morning, Stingers Bombers. I think this one's going to be a very close matchup. Who do we have? We have number 4, I think, for the Stingers, right? So I think number 4 for the Stingers, which is Del Vecchio, which that's a number 4. That's a scary number 4 in Del Vecchio. And then we also will have Cass pitching for the Bombers, I believe. Do the Bombers play any other?
No, that's their first game of the week. Is that Super Saturday?
Is it the same for the Stingers?
No, the Stingers play the Sparrows in the SSBL upset or blowout game of the night presented by last.
So never mind then. So we're not gonna have Del Vecchio against. So that's gonna be 1 versus 1. So Gold versus Cass. Who this is a pitching duel. Obviously Gold got lit up against the Wildcats to start the season. How do you think they bounce back here against the Bombers?
I think that, man, this is so tough because it's the 2, and I'm gonna have to do that morning game, aren't I? Because there's no way that we can get either Whitney or Square to cast that one. So I'm gonna go ahead and put myself there for Super Saturday 1. Let me just make sure I have that clean off my calendar that I can't do that because that right. I know what I'm doing. April 2nd. There's no way I can't cast that one. Yeah, I mean the Bombers and Stingers are 2 teams that, based off their divisions, they need to get the wins they can outside of their division. So it's always a matchup whenever you have the league office play each other. Granted, for me, it's a little bit different. I don't think I've played anyone in league office in the regular season since I became a part of league office.
Because we're all over in the
You're all over the epic, and you're always like counting each other. I'm just over the heroic with like, I've got an underachieving team over here. So it's a little bit different in terms of how they manifest.
Right.
But all that to say, like, I think that, man, this is tough. I think that the Bombers are going to be able to do it. I generally think the Bombers should be able to do this here against the Stingers. And it's just they're just so much more solid overall. The Stingers can be hot and cold at times.
Mm-hmm.
So if the Stingers get hot, they'll get hot. But it'll we'll see how they do against the Sparrows, and I think depending on that Sparrows game will kind of give the momentum towards what that game is.
Yeah, I think even despite what happens in the Sparrows game, I just think this Bombers offense is too strong. I mean, you have Kent Iffy Jr. Putting up numbers. Hamish Rifleman is at the top as well from home runs perspective. I think if the Stingers win, they're 3-1 on the season, where they could be tied with the Bombers come the end of that game. So it's, or they take the lead over the Bombers. So this is a very, very crucial matchup between these two teams, to where the Stingers might get that advantage heading into that postseason picture. So very underrated game. I think it's going to be, what do we have at number 3, I think, as overall, because this next one is our number 1. We're ending the week game of the night with the best game and on both of our opinions here, and that is Gauchos at Unicorns. We've talked about this before. We've talked about how this could potentially be the Super Series this season, and we get a preview of what that could look like here on Super Saturday, game of the night presented by Turtle Beach.
It is so rare that teams who finish, because like the way that this all works out, right, is based off of where you finish for the previous season. It is so rare that the teams that are dominant in one season are utterly dominant in the next.
Mm-hmm.
And it also depends on like where you get out as well. And so this was a perfect storm that both the Gauchos and the Unicorns got out in the conference finals to bring us this matchup. And if this was Gauchos Bombers, it'd be the same feeling as well. But it's not exactly the same feeling though, because the Unicorns have gone through the same type of rebuild that the Gauchos did. The Bombers only had one off season, and then they won the Super Series the next. Mm-hmm. So the Bombers had a rebuild, but it was just like a blip before they won it all. Neither of these teams have won a Super Series. Both of them have done a changing of the tide here, where they've been able to build something really, really special. So I just think it's so cool to have this matchup and to have it so early in the season as well.
Yeah, I agree with that one. This matchup, man, I do see this potentially being a Super Series matchup. This could well be our Super Series come the summer, and I think this. Who we have as well in this matchup? Where do this from a pitching perspective? Because I think this is really going to be, truly where how we can really. This game is very unpredictable, but who do we have from a pitching matchup? That's game 4 for the Gauchos, and I think let's see, Unicorns play 1 prior, so it puts them at 6. This is 7, so that's their number 3. So Sparks versus, I said number 4? 6? Cade 6? Oh boy, I don't know what to say about this. I mean, this could well be a 1-0 ball game decided in like walk-off fashion, or somewhat like the Gauchos scoring a run in the top of this might even go to extras, to be honest. This is a game that is going to be extremely, extremely close, and I'm looking forward to that one coming up this Saturday. SSBL, man, it is something else. And this season, like I said, this is probably going to be one of the best seasons from regular season to postseason as well. The Super Series is always a fun time. Best of 7 is always great. I'm glad that we actually moved to that back in when we made that change. I
think like the best thing as well is that because we've increased the number of teams this season, it doesn't feel like it, but every single team that makes postseason now is going to deserve postseason. Like, I know we've had teams skate in with under 500 records and beforehand, and
overdrafts last season 6-8, I believe.
Yeah, but the way that this is going to work out, like, even if the teams are 500, like in the Epic, there very well could be a team that is 500, two teams that are 500 that make it in, or just around that part. But that's because of how intense the competition is. Whereas, because again, not to peg on the expansion teams, but the easy wins of the expansion teams, your bottom two is already set. And then, like in the heroic, for example, it should be Knights, Moonshots, Walkers as the bottom teams. In which case, you've got 7 teams battling for 6 spots. At least that should be what happens as the season progresses. Anything can happen. The Dragons can always underachieve. But it's so cool to have the mentality that we have. I think we're finally hitting a system in terms of like getting the schedule started up and making sure that everybody knows when things are happening. Appreciate everybody who is, we had a rough couple of seasons in the middle part there as things were transitioning, as we were figuring out what the SSBL was, what our responsibilities looked like in the real world. And, it's still even changing. We've got some people in league office that their lives are going to be taking a new turn. And so we'll need to start thinking about how we start moving on from that. But the biggest thing is that we have the community at the end of the day. I didn't mean to get emotional at the end of this. I just felt empowered. I've been watching a lot of Oscar movies lately. And so that's probably what
that makes sense. Well, that's going to do it for Jack. But before we go, we have to reveal the first winner of the Turtle Beach giveaway for the SSBL Game of the Night presented by Turtle Beach. And that will be It's a Deft, who comes in to win this first headset. You'll be winning a pair of Scout Airs. I will be reaching out to you personally, or you can reach out to me, because I think you might have a different Discord. I don't know. There's a lot of people who it confuses me in the SSBL, because you have Marge, who is Marge in the Discord, but like Totino's Pizza Bites or something in Twitch. So reach out to me on Discord in the DMs, and I will get you situated with getting your Turtle Beach Scout Airs. And congratulations once again for winning the first ever giveaway here with the SSBL and Turtle Beach partnering together. So thanks everyone for tuning in to episode 3 of Jacked. Make sure you do follow here on YouTube, as well as go check out our Twitch, twitch.tv/official SSBL. And make sure you follow there so you can watch our majors action Monday, Tuesdays, and Wednesdays, and sometimes Saturdays for Super Saturdays. And then here on YouTube, you'll be able to find Jacked as well as our minor league action. So thank you for tuning in. I'm Jay Watt alongside Fisac, who has the fresh cut. We'll see you next week for another episode of Jacked.
Hair! Where's my hair?